welcome to the session Intelligent Enterprise, about design to operate and connect digitally to perfect reality. My name is Harald Mueller. I'm head of architecture within the digital supply chain line of business at SAP, and I'll be talking to you about the overall process, but as well give you a bit of context and background. How do we deal with the architecture, not just from a business perspective, but as well, how does it translate into topology? What kind of integration topics do we have, and what is SAP trying to achieve with the overall end-to-end scenario that we do in the context of this intelligent enterprise? Go right away into the agenda. So I'll be talking very briefly about this intelligent enterprise framework, just to set a bit the context. I assume most of or all of you have seen the keynote from Jürgen, so I won't dive into detail on an overall perspective, but rather look at it more into the processes that we are focusing on in the context of digital supply chain. So I'll give you an overview on that, show a bit of the technology highlights, do as well some references to other sessions if you're interested in more details with regards to the architecture. There's a few more sessions that I can recommend to you as well. And then I'll wrap it up. And I'll try to do a demo, at least give you a sense of a live system and look at it behind the scenes. Good, so I'll skip this one. I mean, in general, the story of this intelligent enterprise and how all of the lines of businesses within SAP support that, and how technology and our platform is enabling that one, and jump right into this picture. And the domain that I will be talking is mostly in the context of this manufacturing supply chain. You see a factory picture in there, and the process that I will be talking is primarily designed to operate, so that's as well from a supply chain what is really relevant. Of course, these things play together, so it's not something that is completely in isolation, but as well there's a broader integration with the overall enterprise. Okay, so very quickly on the overview, we always use a circle and we say from design to operate, that is not a linear process, even though in many companies there's kind of individual silos. There's silos in engineering, there's silos in manufacturing, transportation, logistics, or operations, asset management. What we try to do is to break these silos, not just within a company, so really connecting all of these dots from a design of a product to manufacturing, logistics, shipment, delivery, and asset management operations. And there's as well an overarching optimizations that we look at it, and we call that planning. So integrated business planning is one of the products that really looks at all of the functions across the whole enterprise and really tries to do optimizations of the overall process. I always like to do a bit of an analogy. So this process, when we looked at it in this year, there was a focus on discrete manufacturing. So in general, we said, okay, let's pick an industry. Component manufacturing for us is very important. There's quite a lot of these customers, and we said we look at it specifically with this industry flavor. In general, of course, our products should be across all industries, so we want to enable that as well. In 2020, next year, we will put more focus on a process industry. And there's slight variations there, whether you deal physical products or it's discrete manufacturing, or whether you rather produce whatever processes. So companies like BASF and others, they rather mix chemicals than ship those, right? And what I will try to do is always make a bit of analogies. I mean, we're in a software business. SAP is producing software, so we're digital kind of natives, I would call that, right? At least compared to many of these discrete companies. And do a bit of analogies, because I think there are similarities between all the various industries, right? And while SAP has a long history of building software, 40 years, there's similarities. Look at it from a design perspective, then we're all software developers. Of course, we design our products, we build the architectures, we start to develop these products, right? Which is more like a manufacturing process. Our industry as well has changed. Like initially, when I remember that 10, 15 years ago in SAP, we had rather huge waterfall releases. There were like 3 years of development. You make one big shipment for on-premise, and then you give it out. These days, things have changed as well. Fundamentally, we work much more iteratively. Scrum and Agile is one of the things that is very prominent. And as well, the type of software has changed, right? Instead of shipping software that then gets to a customer, he downloads that, which is more the logistics, right? So software is nice because it's not really heavy, so transportation and logistics is rather simple and trivial in general, if everything is smooth and it runs nicely. And we're shipping cloud services as well in much more frequently and much higher iterations than in the past, because what is really interesting for us is we want to get customer feedback. And the same is happening in all the industries. If you look at the discrete industries, and I'll pick an example, for example, there's tool manufacturers, and Germany is very famous for that one, right? So they really build a lot of tools, for example, for their customers, which could be an automotive company, which then takes these tools and uses them in a production context to manufacture cars, for example. And that's roughly the kind of context that I'd like to give to you, make some of those analogies. And in general, software industry is, of course, far ahead compared to the others, right? The other industries, and that's what happened in the last years, is really with Industry 4.0 and connecting all of the things, making digital representations, building much more automation in that. That is basically going cross, and of course software is a big enabler for the whole concept. This is a high-level sketch of this complete process, right? And I already said it is discrete manufacturing, so it starts with the design of a product. What we have done as well in the context of this intelligent enterprise is we said, let's look at it really from a process perspective and not just, I mean, SAP in general has a very product-centric view and sometimes as well has a bit of odd terminologies and glossary, how things are called and how it works. So what we said, okay, when we describe this process, let's just take a standard framework. And then in that case, we took a framework that is coming from APQC. APQC is a standards organization that's American Productivity Quality Center, and they have a process classification framework which really describes these processes. So if we right here create a product design and do early cost estimates, this is not SAP speech, but it is really a cross-industry terminology that we used in that. And the process classification there that is existing is very detailed, so it really describes all of the steps individually. It has both flavors as well across all industries, but as well industry-specific, for example, for component and discrete manufacturing, which we used in this case. So just quickly to give you a glimpse of like what this process classification framework is. And it is, of course, applying to the whole enterprise in general. So it starts with develop a vision and a strategy, what every enterprise should do. We are primarily here in this context, develop and manage products and service, right? There's marketing, there's sales, there's as well, of course, a lot of cross functions. So if you look at some of the other scenarios like HR or hire to retire, then this is more kind of enabling things. And the content there is available in Excel. What we did basically with this content then is we took that as well took this into our own enterprise architecture designer. So if you look at it, one of the products that we have is called Intelligent Product Design that helps you as a product manager or as an owner there to basically manage your requirements, have collaboration with various within your enterprise, but as well with your customers or suppliers who would contribute to your product. And this enterprise architecture designer is as well a tool that we use in our product, Intelligent Product Design. So it's just a modeling tool, and most of you, which are enterprise architects or in general, should know there's various flavors, right, of these modeling tools. This is one of them, and it's browser-based, which makes it very nice, so you can collaborate with that. And all of these scenarios in the intelligent enterprise, we modeled, and we started with process first. So no specifics about the technology or no specifics about the product that is in there. We really said, okay, what is the process that we're talking about? And you see here's one step, which is, for example, called define product requirements and the system concept. And if you look into this one, there's some APQC references, and there's as well a documentation in there which says, okay, you receive and manage customer feedback, blah, 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 right? So it's really the detailed description, and it's something that is common and standard and not invented by SAP in this case, right? So it starts with this thing. Now we as IT people or development people say, okay, now good, high level, the process is fine. How should my landscape actually look like? So what do I do with this whole thing? And I'll show you, this is a PowerPoint. I'll show you as well the real thing. Of course, we modeled that additionally as well in the Enterprise Architecture Designer. And it gives you a high-level overview about what we're looking at it, because the process is not just within one enterprise, but as well it is a process that is spanning actually multiple enterprises. So in this case, we have the component manufacturer, which is the manufacturer, and he has a topology here with a set of products. So he's producing these things. Then it gets shipped and delivered to his own customer. Imagine the car manufacturer, for example, who gets some tools from a tool builder. And in the context of the operator, then this machine helps to as well basically produce a car, right? And there's a collaboration between both, because both are interested. Me as a tool provider, I'm of course interested, how does it behave in real life? Of course, I did a lot of testing and I verified the things. I did the design of this piece, but I would like to get feedback from my customers. How does it really behave? Get as much context information as possible. And this is what we support as well with our products like the Asset Intelligence Network. So that's really something that is very essential there, because it facilitates and helps you to share information about and digital information. We're talking here about the digital twin basically of your product, right? So the customer, of course, is interested, what is happening, what is the documentation for the specific machine, what are service intervals as well. He would like to get kind of software firmware updates or order new spare parts. So that's really one of the master data foundation that is very essential, and where we go a step further and not just say, okay, it's something where you get some software, but we really enable and support this collaboration there. There's another thing which is called logistic business networks. If I ship things from one customer to the other, there's shippers and carriers, so really collaboration on a logistics perspective there. And there's a few things to mention on the specific picture. As I said, we started with a process which was discrete and component manufacturing. And in general, the goal for us is very clear. We want to have the full process supported with a cloud portfolio, right? So in general, the target is very clear. We want to have full cloud solutions. Now, what you see here, for example, there's on the manufacturer side, we have an S/4HANA on-premise. There's the reason for that one. Actually, there's two reasons. One is from a functional perspective, S/4HANA Cloud is not yet there to really support the full scenario. So there are things which we have here, like Engineering Control Center, which basically gets CAD engineering data, and from there you can derive a manufacturer or engineering bill of material, which then goes into S/4. So some of these gaps will of course be closed, but for us it's very important as well that we say we take customers on a journey from where they are today. So there are many customers who are on premise, and whether this is S/4HANA or ECC, it works as well with both. So the integrations we have with these things would work as well with your existing, right? The cloud should have faster innovation cycles, but not necessarily force you into an S/4HANA cloud migration, right? That's a longer journey, which is there. Have a look at the next step then. In general, as I said, really the challenge is, if I look at the process on an overall, then the challenge is, okay, what are the solutions that I can put together in order to really enable this process as a whole, right? And it really starts with the business perspective and the process perspective. And I showed you the value flow. So that was the first thing where I said that's where we start. We use as well a standard classification framework. It's not something where we talk business process SAP specific speech. And then the second step would be, now what are the products actually that I would need in order to support this overall process? And I'll dive quickly into that one as well. So there's lots of diagrams here. This is a value flow, a specific one. What I would like to have a look into is a linear value flow. And in this case as well, from a modeling perspective, these are standards. So you have basically a swim lane here. We say this is the operator. And in the current process, basically the operator says, OK, I would like to request a product improvement. And then it triggers from the manufacturing perspective, or the manufacturer who is in this design phase says, OK, now there's a new requirement. I need to manage this requirement. And this is the process step in that specific thing. Again, it's documented. It says what it does. But as well, there's dependencies in this specific thing. And if you look at the dependencies, then it will tell you, OK, in order to complete this process step, there's a set of products which you would need in order to implement that process, right? And in the current case, OK, I don't want a flash player. In the current case, it would be, for example, S/4HANA Cloud for intelligent product design. That is a cloud product which we have there. So that's a cloud service or a cloud solution. But as well, you have S/4HANA on-premise products like the engineering control center, which is part of that one, right? And you know, in order to implement that process, these are roughly the products that I would need. So you get a first glimpse of dependencies from a process perspective and which could be the products. Now, clearly, that's still very high level, right? It's not too bad already. It helps you. So you have a value flow. You have a rough overview. What are the products that I would need in order to do the implementation? Of course, the next step would be, how does it look in detail, right? What is this process actually doing on a very detailed and a fine-grained level? So that would be like the next step in the modeling. So the questions that you ask yourself really, OK, how can I implement this scenario? Not just which products are involved as well, but which roles or personas would have to do what specifically in that context. Additional information, what are the data objects which are affected by that one, which are eventually changed, and what kind of specific, very detailed integration points would I need to have, right? So we'll look into this as well. Again, in the system, and this is a preview, so the system I'm showing to you is currently an SAP internal system. Of course, what we aim and what we want to do is give this whole content to our customers and partners, right? So it should be available for every one of you, and I think it's really a valuable source of information in general for enterprise architects. Good. So let me take one of these diagrams, which is basically level 3 zoom into the process. And let me select one that is a bit more complex. So you see there's roughly 23 of them, and they have different levels of granularity. So I basically picked a step, which in this case is called procure and manufacture. And of course, it's super small. Nevertheless, should be able to zoom into there. So we'll look again at this, for example. A manufacturing process is triggered by a sales order, right? So there's an incoming sales order, which means for me, OK, I need to produce something. I need to get this into production. And afterwards, there's logistics, so I need to ship that. So the sales order converts basically into a production order. And afterwards, it's then shipped and delivered to the customer. So the incoming and the trigger was basically a sales order. You see that's the data object that is modeled there. And you would say in our current modeling process here, the production planning would be started based on planned orders which are coming from IBP. So integrated business planning is basically looking at demand and supply and facilitates the overall process. It's as well able to create such a production order in S4. And you see we have a swim lane here, which is actually S4HANA, so that's in core, in ERP. What you see additionally, the persona or the role that is responsible for this. So it's a production planner who is actually dealing with this specific process. And as I said, this is again a standard, so the modeling framework is BPMN, so that's Business Process Model Notation. It's version 2. There's many tools out there who support that, and of course you can take this and export the artifacts and load it into your tool of choice, right? So that's definitely something that is usable, and those which have worked with SAP Cloud Platform Workflow, they should know basically the modeling and the process steps themselves. So we see here as well, there's additional data objects. Material is very important. There's as well something which we call a manufacturing bill of material, because the way how a product has been designed is more an engineering perspective, so how are these things assembled? But when you produce that, you need to make sure that all the parts which you would need during the manufacturing process come then at the production line at the right time, in the right sequence, and as well in order to do all of these things, right? So I was in S/4HANA, and of course, what would happen then from S/4HANA, you would create out of that a sales order, transform that, and basically initiate a production order, right? So if you look at the product here, that would be involved. So there's basically a flow that says, I want to create a shop order, and now we're in digital manufacturing cloud. The production supervisor is again the respective persona that would be involved there. And you see this integration line here, there's additional information to this one. So it even says, okay, there's some documentation, this is an IDOC, what it says, and there's some additional information here which tells you, okay, this is actually the API that is used, and I get a direct reference as well to the API hub. So from there, I can directly see what is actually the API that I, as a developer, would have to call in order to basically initiate and trigger this process. Right, so that's the context where I said you get additional information, how to connect these systems, how to integrate them, and which specific APIs would be called. That is very important as well. If you think about customers have not only SAP software, they might as well have a diverse set of things, and the manufacturing execution system is not necessarily a product that is from SAP, but at least you know, okay, these are some hooks, and those are specific APIs. So if I am able to basically plug in there, then I could as well choose another manufacturing execution system, right? Then I would like to show a video. So this is one of the components, and actually in Hanover fair, that is the biggest industry fair in Germany, we showed a real life pump, for example. So this is a specific component that a manufacturer has given us as well, which we had on the booth. I think it was shown as well at Sapphire. So those of you who have been at Sapphire might have had a chance to see this thing really in real life, how it works. And we had demos basically showcasing the thing through the whole life cycle, from an engineering and the design perspective as well, and to the manufacturing. This is very manufacturing specific, but as well there was a small automated warehouse where things were basically automatically plugged, and you see them as well. They were shipped in that context. There's some simulation in there, so we do not just measure how does it behave in real life and get some sensor data out of the operations, but as well we have a simulation model where we say, how would it behave under specific conditions of stress, right? And with the simulation model, you can as well gain much more insights, or basically have some sort of virtual sensors to say what would happen if I would put this stress on the system, how would the overall component then behave in real life. Okay. Then quick overview as well about what we're doing specifically with our product, with our program, and this design to operate, and what are the important things. This is a very high level, call it architecture slide or whatever. It really shows what we have as business services, and for us, I already talked about that Asset Central, or the foundation itself is really very essential, because that's where we say this is our representation of the digital twin, right? With the pump itself is modeled there. There's something like a template for the pump or the model, which during the inception phase is something where you would say, okay, that's how it should like that. This is how I would design that. Once it is manufactured, then basically I have a specific instance of this one. We call that then an equipment, right? This becomes a real thing, which is then shipped to a customer. It has a serial number, so it's uniquely identified. Whereas the model itself is more generic, and that's rather operations manual documentation, additional attributes that it has. And once it's a real thing, then I can as well connect sensor data to this and link that and have references to real data which is happening in context, right? If it's then operated, it might have certain conditions, there might be certain stress on that, there might as well be some maintenance that needs to be done with it. And we use this Asset Central Foundation really as a basis for all our products, whether it's in the asset management with predictive maintenance, or whether it's in the manufacturing context where you're not so much interested in the operations or the maintenance processes, but you're interested in how did the manufacturing process really work? What was the quality of the things that I have produced? So in that context, it's more important to look at quality aspects, for example. But still, it's one thing, and it is used by all the products. So I don't have copies of the thing in all of the various products, right? And this is where we say it's one of the central things that we are contributing to Cloud Platform as well, to say this is master data, and we want to make that available. And with AIN on top, we enable additional collaboration and networking between customers and business partners. Then I won't talk about all of the products that are happening in there, but give you an overview about what has been the focus that we did in the context of this program. So I already took you through this process documentation, how we use the enterprise architecture designer. And you get a sense, hopefully, how you take value flow, how you do your system landscape planning, how you do the topology, and what really happens in detail, and what are the processes there. There was another thing where we put a lot of focus in, is really the user experience. And it doesn't mean we take all of the 20 products and everything looks the same, but it is really a focused approach from a persona perspective. So we look at it, for example, from a production planner perspective. How does this production planner perceive our products? How do they feel like? Of course, we want to have as much as possible common technologies. So Fiori, in general, is the thing that we have done there. There's Fiori 3.0, which is coming up and is implemented in the product. And we're driving that along this process and not just enhancement within a local product. So this overall experience is really very important. I talked about Asset Central as a central master data foundation. You might have heard other sessions. In general, common master data and having that in the cloud as a single source of truth is one of the major themes within the intelligent enterprise. But for us, it's very specific, and of course, the digital twin is one of the central foundations, right? So we're really looking at assets, and it's physical assets, right? So it's not an asset from a finance perspective that we're talking about. Good. I think the other is rather table stake, of course, having single sign-on and having a proper security, so I don't need to log in each time into every individual application with a different authentication method. So that's rather table stakes. And then I'd like to take you very quickly through some of the user experience things. As I said, we look at it on a role and persona perspective, and that's how we want to drive these improvements. Of course, technology is a good enabler for that with SAP UI5 and Fiori there. So here's a set of all of these roles. Let me see whether that works. Can we look into that? Yeah, seems to be. So there's diverse personas. If you look at design, this is more an engineering function. And if we say engineers, this is more in discrete. It's a different thing than a software engineer, right? What we develop as software developers is not physical things and not machines, but rather software. Good. Let me run through that as well. I think I have an example. So in the context of design, there's this persona of a product manager. And in general, we as well said, okay, what are specific competencies? And that's really important, because if you think about a different persona, for example, a person that is doing maintenance and a service technician that goes out there has totally different expectations than like a product manager. So a product manager is really basically using specific tools. That could be the enterprise architecture designer, that might be high sophisticated modeling tools, CAD tools, simulation tools, etc. But as well, from a UI perspective, fundamentally different, like a service technician, which is typically out in the field, and he says, okay, I need something which is on my mobile and should be as easy as possible. So I get basically my instructions, my work orders, and I do the execution there and basically tap that on the mobile. Good. So again, basically on the persona, this was the process, receive customer feedback. So he looks at the requirements, he manages requirements. Most of you, I assume, are working with Jira or something similar. So as a product owner, you deal with a similar process like this specific persona. Good. The production supervisor would be very similar. I mean, he's rather looking at what is actually happening on my shop floor, what are the machines, how are they utilized, which are the people that need to be where exactly on that machine. So detailed scheduling would be one of the tasks that he's doing then when he schedules the production. Right? And we always have a few screenshots and examples in there for that. Of course, I would recommend doing specific demos or have a look at the specific products. Good. Now, there's one more aspect that I'd like to talk to you. So we went through all of the vertical things, and I said, okay, this is all the processes, how we want to connect that. Now, there's a few things that are changing as well fundamentally is with all of these machines and having digital context to them, they produce a lot of data. Right, so in a manufacturing process, there's a lot of industrial data that is happening during a manufacturing process or during some operations, etc. And what is really important for us within our solutions, we want to use that data. So it's machine data. SAP is calling OData today operational data, all of our business processes. That is sometimes a bit confusing because if you talk to people in the context of Industry 4.0 or manufacturers, then operational data is actually machine data, which is coming from the machines. And we're rather talking about our business process transactional data, right? So X and O has sometimes some challenges because it's clashing with other terminologies. But in this context, I'm really talking about how do we get data that is coming from machines, and that might be really big data. These are sensors, which sometimes might have very high frequencies, so there could be several hundred of hertz frequency, vibration analysis, things like that. So the things that you would have to do in that context is basically connect those devices, and there's specific standards which are existing there, right? If we look at manufacturing, for example, there's a very common standard which is called OPC UA. SAP is part of this OPC Foundation, so we do contribute to these standards as well. There's some open source implementations, which, for example, Microsoft is one of the primary drivers. We have a collaboration there as well, not just with Microsoft, but in general with the whole foundation, and there are multiple parties who help in that. So there's connectivity standards, how to connect all of these machines, and there's as well evolving standards, how more automation can happen there. In general, it is a very heterogeneous environment. Most factories have a lot of legacy and brownfield things, but the goal is very clear. Get plug and play enabled as well for those machines to be able to get data and send commands and orchestrate all of those machines on the factory, on the shop floor. And of course, warehouses is the same. So SAP has an enterprise warehouse management product which is doing some of these orchestrations as well and does a lot of automations, at least for many of our large customers. But it's the same. These are other devices which basically handle logistics and warehouse management. So connecting those devices, getting that data, having proper standards in place there, and then typically you would get that data and push it in the cloud. So the pattern is always the same. You don't want to push this data directly into one of your business applications. That's for sure not what you want to have. And don't want to overload our applications, which should be doing business processes with petabytes of sensor data that really doesn't make sense. So in general, you would say, okay, I'm pushing this into the cloud. I have something which is a technology. It could be Kafka, could be whatever kind of a queuing system, which really takes the data and basically persists it, right? So the first step would be you buffer this, you get all the data, and then you would persist it. And persistence, if we talk about petabyte scale, then it's very obvious that this is not going to be into a HANA database, right? I will use HANA at a later point in time when I want to put this data into business context and do analysis. But in general, this is rather raw data, which you would take and then persist it into a hyperscaler, either S3 or on Azure, it could be a blob store. And you have different sets of temperatures. So take the data, store it, basically persist it. And in general, the pattern is then always the same. You can, of course, do some analysis directly when you ingest the data. So that's what we would call streaming. So you could take streaming of that technology, do some pre-processing, might do some aggregation calculations already during that process. And I will not talk about all of the technology components, but of course SAP has some offerings there, but the same, you could basically take hyperscaler offerings from Amazon or from Azure to do some of these processing and analysis, right? So Data Hub is one of the products which clearly we want to do this processing and analysis. And you could do it immediately when the data comes in, but as well in a batch job, which is more scheduled. And typically data scientists would rather work on historic data. So they would use the tool set in order to do the analysis on that data on that level. And as I said, for us, it's really important. This is our focus on digital supply chain. We're coming from an application and a process perspective. So the applications and the processes are key for us. And we look at optimizations from that process perspective. So take maintenance as an example. Most customers, and I guess if you have a car, then you see the same pattern, right? You basically say, okay, it's run for 20,000 kilometers, or sometimes it's 50,000 kilometers, and then you basically say, I need to go to service. Does that really make sense? Especially if you have complex machines, the usage patterns might be fundamentally different, right? What you really want to say, I would like to go into service before the machine breaks, and I want to do this rather predictive and do preventive maintenance and not wait until it either breaks down or do it prematurely too early, because that's as well expensive, especially if you have really very asset-intensive industries. If you look at mining or some of the others, then some of those machines really costs millions of dollars, and if they break down for a few hours as well, the financial impact for a customer is really huge. So we support customers as well. They're planning their maintenance strategies, so really looking at it, criticality analysis. There's as well standards in the industry how to do those assessments and how a tool can support you with that. And once you did your criticality analysis, then you look at what would be my maintenance strategy. Do I run this to failure because it's a scrap thing and it doesn't matter if it's breaking? Or is it super critical and I really need to look at it thoroughly? And then you put that data that comes from the machines, you put it into context of a business process and you say, okay, this is the trigger and that's where I would like to do the maintenance. And then of course important is not just know about I should do something, but as well do the real execution then, right? Good. I think this was the architecture slide. And as I said, there's a reference there. If you're a bit more interested in the various technologies and want to get a level 2 detail into the architecture, then I can recommend the session DAT 301. That's either myself or a colleague who's doing that. Good. I won't show you videos. That's definitely no time for that. Just to wrap it up and make the key takeaways. So in general, from this intelligent enterprise, it is really all about end-to-end processes. What our goal at SAP is to really make this smooth from an overall end-to-end perspective, right? Ideally, the landscape and the topology would be a plug and play, and you press a button and it kind of materializes as well for the processes that you would like to solve. That's the grand vision. Of course, there's a lot of work in front of us. So improving this integration there, central master data, and in our case, it's Asset Central, which is really supporting this digital twin for us, is a very foundational element. We really put a lot of work into that one, and as well with the network to enable collaboration across companies. And as I said, user experience from a specific persona perspective was one of the main highlights as well that we looked into. And with that, I would finish my session and give some time for questions. Those of you which might have been formerly Sybase customers might know there was a Power Designer. There has been another product which basically is the web version of this Power Designer, which I showed you at the moment. This is an SAP licensed product. Yes, there's some more aspects. If you buy intelligent product design from SAP, then this is one component in there. So intelligent product design is a cloud-based solution. The tool, the modeler tool, is part of this product. But as well, there you get significant additional features like requirements management, really as well, kind of creating additional models, from an engineering perspective. And it will be enhanced as well to have this engineering control center, which is an integration into modeling systems or CAD, CAE systems. I try to repeat the question and just to cross-check whether I understood it correct. So there was a specific questions to integrated business planning. That is our cloud solution, and that is really the go-to solution where we want to get all our customers on the journey. APO is as well that has been a legacy product, which was part of ECC, still is there. It does still exist. Our goal is very clear. We want to get all of our APO customers onto IBP, and there's a set of limitations and gaps. I think supply network planning is one of those features. There's some more detailed optimizations which are currently in APO, which IBP does not have. But our goal is really to as well embrace, and we put a lot of investments to close those gaps, right? To really get all our customers then from APO onto integrated business planning. And I think you had another. The question was, is they will be closed over time. Yes, there's roadmaps and. I guess until we have closed all of the gaps, that will take probably 2 years or so. Yeah. And APO is, I mean, it is still there today, right? So it's functional. APO will not be part of S/4HANA Cloud. That is very clear. This technology that is in there with the live cache is deprecated and will not be enhanced anymore. It is still available on-prem, I think, though. Right? So other questions? Yeah, of course.
You mentioned that this is going to be a core element of, let's say, our journey. Device management. Do you see the device management also part of, let's say, SAP of our portfolio?
Yes.
Device management part from the, maybe this.
Yeah, this. Yes. So I guess I'll paraphrase again the questions so everybody in the audience. So there was a specific question on device management. And I think there's different perspectives, right? If we talk about a digital twin, we'll look at it more holistically from a process perspective, right? And there's assets, it has master data, it has various perspectives. If you look at it from design, then simulation models are important. If you look at operations, then other aspects are important. There's one thing which, of course, is kind of very connectivity-centric. So if I want to connect the machine, then it's rather interested, okay, what kind of protocols is this machine able to talk? How do I connect that securely, and how do I get data in there? So device model is one of these things that is important. And you might know SAP had technology, right? Leonardo IoT had as well connectivity and device management. This is something that exists there today. It will still continue to exist. But in general, what we tell our customers, you do not necessarily need to be stuck with SAP only. What we're opening up, we want to be open to embrace as well existing solutions, which could be Azure IoT, Edge, right? That's one of the connectivity device management solutions. There's standards which are really very important as well, like OPC UA. If you look at manufacturing in general, it's rather a gateway which we have with our plant connectivity, which connects to all kind of machines which speak OPC UA, for example. So that's another solution that is very important. And of course, we want to give customers choice specifically so they can connect these devices, so they can as well store the data in their own accounts, be it then in Azure or Amazon. What we want to do is as well to enable and bring that data into context, connect to that, and consume data where it exists and resides today. Many of our customers, specifically process industries, they have petabytes and tens of years of data which exist in historians. Of course, we want to connect that and do not copy all of that data in. That makes no sense. Thanks a lot and enjoy TechEd.